All right, back to some critiques. First off, let me start by saying thank you to the photographer who sent in these photos for me. These are from a bride getting ready in the morning from an actual wedding, and the photographer has sent me pretty much every photo that they have taken from the morning of at the bride's place. So I had a chance to go through all of these photos and I made some notes that I really want to talk to you guys about. And hopefully, this will help everyone in the way they approach these getting ready photos and overall how you approach the wedding day itself. So, a lot of this conversation is not about a single photo, but it's about the full product. I think talking about a single photo is great, but I think what we do is not just one photo. What we do as wedding photographers has to do with telling an entire story. And so that's what I'm keeping in mind while I'm looking through these photos here. So first off, the things that I noticed here. So let me call this down. Thankfully, the photographer did call the images down for me as well. So we have a called down version. So we went from about 630 photos shot at the bride's house, and we've called down to about 85 photos. And so let's just quickly, all of us, go through these 85 photos so you get an idea of what will be edited and delivered. So in other words, these are raw files turned into JPEGs, not edited at all. So we're looking at what the photographer saw when they took the photos. Cool. So looks great. I am really happy with this coverage. If this was shot from my studio, I'd be like, yup, good job, pat on the back. And of course, I'll get a little bit of feedback, which will be coming soon. But overall, I think the photographer did a good coverage, good coverage of the bride prep. Everything that needed to be captured is here. Good job keeping the focus on the people that matter. This looks like the immediate family. There's photos of the parents interacting with her, and then photos of everyone outside, family portraits, etc. Great job doing these photos of the parents. A lot of times we miss out on the fact that this event, a wedding, is not just the bride and groom, but also their immediate family, the people that they love as well. So I'm really, really proud and happy that you managed to get these photos of the parents that they can cherish, especially this photo. It's so cute. I love it. Well done on that. Good work keeping the light clean. I think overall, when we're looking at the photos, the rejects as well of the home, it's your typical home in the suburbs. Where the lighting is typically not that great. There's always going to be mixed lighting everywhere. So good job, bringing in your own light and making these photos and fixing the white balance where it needs to be and getting it pretty good in camera. I mean, there's very little in terms of editing that you need to do to fix these photos. Most of the editing will be done to enhance them. So I'm really happy with that. Now, looking through these photos, I want to talk to you about a few opportunities here. First thing, the detail photographs. These look like very much an amateur snapshot. And I guess you realize that and you've come down and you've taken a few more. I find some people have a hard time seeing details. And one of the best ways to just kind of get started with details is to just get close. Get close and do it with a 50 mil or an 85. And then show me the detail in a very clean background. So just to show you, like, just put a shoe on a clean background and get me the shoe. Don't get too crazy. Don't go too nuts. Like, I've tried all these different options in this wedding, but to be honest, my favorite is just this one. If you need to get more inspiration, you can always find inspiration on Pinterest, right? You can just type in shoes, creative photography. Like, to be honest, like, just doing this is more than enough. The other thing, I think it's over. Let me just show you. Yeah, get close with jewelry. Just get close, put it on a background that you can work with, and shoot them really, really close so that you can see what the details are. I don't own a macro lens. I shot this using these close-up photography filters. I just throw them on my 55 millimeter and shoot these photos that I just showed you here. You don't really need to own a macro for the purpose of wedding photography. You can get away with these close-up filters, but if you have a macro, even better. You can get in close and do these kind of photos. So instead of trying to do these lay flats are hard. I try them too, but really, they don't really work for me. The only time lay flats work really well is when you have florals and you have an invitation card or something like that. But I keep my details by getting in nice and close to them. That's what I would recommend you do as well, because I don't want to spend too much time on details, because that's not where it's all at. It's with the moments and the interactions with families and friends. That's what I care most about. So for my details, I just keep it safe so that at least I have something to show for. I noticed that you tried it with the shoe, but you tried it with your wide angle lens. And to be honest, wide angle shoe shots always look really weird because they make the shoe look wider than it needs to be, and big feet, to be honest, are not the most attractive things. Okay, so that's a quick talk about details. Next thing that I want to talk to you about is your backgrounds. I noticed that most times you are overcomplicating your backgrounds for yourself by putting the bride in places like here, where there's already something really, really hard for you to work against. Instead, just move her to somewhere where there is a clean background. So there is this wall that you can use, this white wall. If you want to use that, totally cool. This gray is a great idea, but it's too low, so it's not working as well. But the white would have been what I would have defaulted to in this location. But the best thing to do is to first look for the light. For example, here, if this photo is any indication of where the light is coming from, the light is peering into this house from the back. So if you use any part of this window, this bay window area, you would get really good diffused light coming in because the sun is in the back of the house, so the front of the house is more diffused light. Now, that would have given you really good light to work with, and I would have stuck to a simpler backdrop and then just used the window light. That's what I normally do with most of my getting ready stuff. I just stick next to a window and get as much of my photos as I can possibly get with that window light. I don't bring out my lights unless I necessarily need to bring them out. So again, this is against a white wall. All I've done is brought the bride right out to the front of that window and using that to light her with most of it. So I noticed that you had to, bring out your lighting here or use the circular makeup lights that the makeup artists use. They're not bad, but I always find that window light is always your best option when you have it available. If you don't have it available, I would try to use a diffused light source for the bridal portraits, just because I want them to be safe and sellable. I'll speak about this safe and sellable thing at the end of this, but yeah, that's the main thing. I want to make sure that you watch your background. More so than inside the house, the photos out here, these backgrounds are really messy. I know the light is amazing here. I would really, really be careful with this kind of backgrounds. And if you find that you always end up with this kind of backgrounds and you can't really solve this problem, buy a 70 to 200 because that will allow you to use this area, go 200 all the way out, zoomed in so that you get less of the background as possible. So that is one option. The other option is if you look at this house, let's go back up. I would have kept all the portraits right in here. Close that door and do all the portraits here. I know the rim light is really beautiful and it looks great, but if you can't find a space that works, I would keep it to there. If you want to use the rim light, I would have put the couple here, sorry, the subjects here, and used this part of the house as my backdrop. So I keep a straight on backdrop and shoot onto that for the most part. So in the photos that you're showing me, which are over here, yeah, these ones, it's just the angle that you're shooting everything in that's putting everyone in this messy backdrop that's bothering me the most. Please pay attention to your backdrop and your composition. That will elevate your game much, much more than where you are now. Definitely, for sure. Like these things growing out of her hair and all of that stuff, those are the things that you need to watch out for as a professional. Cool. Watching your backdrops. Next, using wide-angle lenses when you are in this type of environment. Wide-angle lenses really have lots and lots of distortion, especially when you have, let's see, everybody here. This is really hard to photograph. I would have asked them to turn into the light, which is camera right, and I would have gotten both the sisters to stand up on behind the mom and dad, and I've gotten a more tighter grouping than a wider grouping. Sometimes you do end up in places where you can't really get everybody in the frame. Then what I do is I try my best to layer people. So even in here, when all the girls showed up, it was really hard for me to photograph everybody. I never go below a 35 when I'm doing my coverage at home. I just try to layer as much as possible or just get really close on the details. I'll get the detail of the person working and then perhaps just kind of like one or two things, but I'm going in for the detail so that I'm telling the story. And when I have to do this kind of stuff, I'll move it where I can do it. This makes one of the biggest difference in the way your photos look. It's when you don't have this wide angle distortion that usually is common with amateur photographs, that when you move them outside and you use your 85 and you get the same set of photos, your photos look so much better now because that it has no distortion, it has a little bit of bokeh, and it looks really, really nice because the lenses flatter people as opposed to making them wider and bringing in all this distortion that's happening here. So in the future, when this is about to happen, photograph it, but also tell them that these are fun, these are great, but I'd like to have these moments happen somewhere nicer. It's okay to say that because you're not a photojournalist. At least I don't consider myself a photojournalist. Anytime you're directing even one shot at a wedding, then the couple is expecting you to direct as many as you can. Because if you can direct one, you can direct them all. If you don't direct any and you tell the couple, listen, I don't direct anything at all, I just photograph, reportage style, everything as it's happening, that's completely different. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you start to go ahead and direct one photo, now the couple or the people in your frame are expecting for you to give them the instructions. They don't know what looks good in camera and what doesn't. That's why they hire you. So if something does not look good in camera, free yourself to be able to say, listen guys, this is not going to look good here. Just being able to say that alone has empowered me to take better photographs. I know it sounds super simple, but it's one of these big, big things that I noticed with all of my second photographers who just get started with me. That's the first piece of advice I give them. If you end up in a room where you have to use a wide angle to get group photos, A, clump the group so you have more than one layer. If you can't do that, then move them somewhere where you can shoot with a proper lens choice, not anything below 35. That's my rule. Anyway, moving on. I noticed that you noticed this light. It's beautiful. I love how you used it as backlight slash, the hazy look. I would have loved to see you chase this light a little bit more. Maybe you ran out of time, but I love what you're trying to do here with the shoe, with a little bit of rim light coming in. I would have done the same with her face. I would have used your 85 and done a similar shot like this with her face being a predominant portion and rim light around on her face. I would have used this light to create more of a bring her out to where the sun is, and then use this dark space to create more of an edgy look if you want. Or you can pull her all the way out, get right to the ground, and shoot into the sky. Get a silhouette, or maybe blow out the sky and get something else. I would have loved to see you chase this light and work it a little bit more. And the same goes for when you're working these kind of scenes as well. Whenever you have everything done and you know that the light is good and you've figured it out, shoot through and give me more images here. So in this wedding, for example, over here, I shot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 photos that I kept. I must have shot at least 100 photos of her throughout all of this. I get one looking down, one looking away, one looking at the camera, looking down and smiling, and all types of combinations I can probably get. I try to get them before I move on to my next shot. This works in your favor when you're building an album. So this is the final point I want to leave you guys with. That is, when I'm looking at this entire catalog, the one thing that stands out to me is that the thought process that you have when you're shooting is evident in that you're simply moving reactively through each portion of this day. What I would have loved to see is a little bit more intentional shooting from you. And what I mean by that is when you shoot intentionally, shooting for something, so say an album or a slideshow, then the photos that you get will look a little bit different. So my ultimate goal with most wedding photography is to build albums. So when I went through this catalog and then I picked the photos that I think would go into an album, I got about 17 photos. I just wanted photos that really told me the story that was happening here. So these are the photos that I came up with. So we got bride's portraits, bride getting ready, and bride with mom and dad, and family people having a little bit of fun, and then her leaving. Great. Now, what I mean by being intentional in your shooting style is that, see these photos? They all look like they're shot in different times and different conditions. So when you try to make an album and you put it together, it doesn't flow as well as if you made all the photos under the same circumstances. So these two photos belong together. this one and a few more should have been shot with this one to go with this one, right? Because this is happening, so she's getting her chinny on, and then this set would have, if you shot a little bit more here, you would have had one more spread that this, and this would go in. And then over here, you would have had more details and more of her face or back details, so I can make a more introduction to the bride spread. So the way I work is I create an intro to the bride, the details, family interactions, and then on and on. So coming to this family interactions page, one thing that I noticed is we have mom and the bride looking at the camera, dad and bride having a moment, but no one else is having a moment. Everyone else is looking at the camera. So when you know that you're shooting for an album, now you know that you want to complete the story with every individual. So you can create either everybody looking at the camera having fun, or everybody having a moment with the bride. If it's up to me, I'd shoot both, and I'd make a spread of both, because my business works by selling more spreads. So the other thing I'd always watch out for is, making sure you shoot all of them in the same dimension. So if you start shooting some of them horizontal, stick to the whole series or chapter in horizontal. If you start shooting some of them in vertical, stick to the whole series in vertical, because that will help you when you come back and you want to make an album. It makes it so much easier to make the album, because you're designing the album in your head as you're working through each chapter of the wedding day. So the other thing I noticed is there are very little photos in here that bridge between chapters. And what I mean by that is there's this one photo of her leaving the house, which will now bridge between here and the venue. But between other moments during the day, like where she's getting ready and then moving to meet her family, and then coming together and doing this part, there is no bridging images. And what I mean by bridging images is that, so say she's done getting ready. I'd love to see an introduction of how these guys came together. There's a big stop from, say, I'm going from here, and then boom, all of a sudden, there's family. Where did they come from? How did they arrive to this part? Is there a photo of her and them interacting other than just sitting down and doing this? So even if I miss that moment, I'll stage it. I have no qualms about staging these bridging moments, because sometimes I have to, because the couples I photograph and the people I photograph, they need the direction. And because of that, I do offer that direction, and I don't feel any ways about it. So the bridging images are just as important as, when you do it for these big moments, also for these smaller chapters throughout the day. So hopefully in the future, you consider shooting your wedding day in chapters, and you consider shooting the details a little bit closer and keep it to a clean backdrop, and shoot it with a non-wide angle lens, maybe a 50, or you buy a close-up filter. You shoot all the details as one chapter. You shoot the introduction to the bride as one chapter, and you keep that consistent. And you shoot through as many photos as you possibly can get through a single lighting source that you find. And you avoid wide angles in these kind of photos, plus in these kind of photos. And when you can't avoid them, I would say bunch them up together, make a grouping that you can use a lens, maybe a 50 or something. And then when you do these kind of photos, make sure you watch the background and you do a complete story, not just a few people, but everybody gets their own moment to shine. Overall, I think this is done really well. You've done more than what most people do, and I'm happy about that. But if you just make these tweaks, I think you'll have an incredibly good coverage. So for the next time, just work towards a final product, and that would make a world of a difference. And if somebody goes, hey, take a photo here, and if the lighting and the background doesn't work for you, tell them that, hey, it doesn't work, let's move over here and take the photo. Awesome. Hopefully this was helpful, guys. I'm not going to cut or do anything. I'm just going to post this as is. If you want to watch this in full speed, you can, or half speed, whatever, like double the speed probably makes the most sense, so you can just get through it really fast. Hopefully it was helpful. Have a good one. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.